let's chat a little bit about GameStop and some of these other memes that we have been watching here. As I mentioned, they've got the shareholder meeting at 11. And Myles, as you've talked about, the company has not really taken advantage of its meme status. AMC's really been the one that has done that to the utmost in terms of selling shares. George Sherman's still the CEO. At least until July 31st. They still haven't announced who a replacement will be. Ryan Cohen, who owns 13% of the company and has been an activist, is formally joining the board as chairman today, it looks like, at that shareholder meeting. But I still have to wonder if we're going to get some kind of announcement like what we got from AMC.
I mean, it feels like you have to get both that kind of announcement and also news on who the next CEO is going to be today. Now, as you mentioned, they have 6 weeks to sort that out. I guess kind of 7 weeks to sort that out here by the end of next month. And maybe there are some limitations there in their process because Ryan Cohen hasn't officially been chairman of the board over the last few months. He'll, again, as you mentioned, officially take that role today. But Jared Blickery flagged for us that Wendy's came out with a convertible note offering earlier this morning. Now, again, they're working on the debt side of their balance sheet. They're not coming out and issuing stock, but Wendy's is another example of a company that is using enthusiasm for their equity securities, perhaps as a catalyst for looking at cleaning up their balance sheet a little bit. And I think the GameStop experience here has been informative in a number of ways. I think the durability of the rally is obviously incredible. I mean, I flagged this in the morning brief. I guess it was yesterday that Keith Gill was before Congress saying he still liked the name. That was at $40 a share, and it seemed crazy at $40, and now it's at $300 per share. Remember that GameStop would go to $420. $420 is kind of the meme level for all of these names, and GameStop has indeed at some points traded above that. $483 is the actual high print on the stock here. But yeah, I think from a management perspective, Soz, there just is a lot to be desired on how GameStop has played this, though I do think that, one, that's going to change. We know that's going to change. There's going to be changes to the board and also to the C-suite, and there have been changes so far, but I think has served as a bit of a template for some of these secondary meme plays and a trade that continues and that I think is probably going to continue. It's a blueprint for how not to play it. AMC is maybe more instructive here, and the aggression with which companies try to use these online jokes as ways to actually further the business, I think is probably it is the next leg of this story.
Myles, it amazes me that at some point today, around maybe 4:30 or so, GameStop's going to come out here and, you heard Emily tease it. They're probably going to post an operating loss on an adjusted basis of over $67 million. And at this time last year, they lost on that same basis close to $100 million. And me being a numbers/fundamental analysis type of guy, it is amazing that the stock will probably ignore all of these things. And it really boils down to this. As you mentioned, Ryan Cohen is probably 2.5 hours away before he becomes the chairman, and I would say an executive chairman of a GameStop, which is much more active than a traditional chairman. Nonetheless, 2.5 hours away from becoming the chairman of a GameStop. And does this meme crowd care if he says anything today? Really, it's probably in GameStop's best interest to continue to just shut up, build the hype around any turnaround plan that Cohen is trying to orchestrate, along with his many new executives that he's brought in from the likes of an Amazon and from a Chewy. Keep the anticipation building, potentially come out here, raise even more cash, and then maybe hold an investor day later this year and lay out his grand 30-year vision for GameStop and see where the stock goes after that.
As you bring up, and as we've talked about many times, this story started with Roaring Kitty and others like him sort of trying to make the fundamental case. But as Emily alluded to, the number of so-called meme stocks has been growing. You've got a Clover Health that seems to have caught the attention of meme stockers recently. Remember, this is the company that operates private and Medicare health exchanges. It went public, merging with a Chamath Palihapitiya SPAC back in January. It's the target of a short-selling research report by Hindenburg. It's been up in recent days. Wendy's, as we've talked about as well. And just a couple of quick thought bubbles on this whole meme phenomenon. One is that a lot of other stocks that we haven't even talked about have followed a similar trading pattern to the meme stocks. And I don't think some of them have ever been mentioned on the Wall Street Bets platform or elsewhere. It seems like they've just been caught up with it. And similarly, as someone who's been doing this for a minute or two, this period of time seems somewhat unprecedented in terms of any given day. You can look at a trending ticker list or a most active list and see a lot of stocks on there that don't have any fundamental news that are moving a lot. And I'm not just talking about penny stocks, but stocks of some size. That is a fairly contemporary phenomenon. You would always see the market moving in one way or another as a whole and not necessarily know what individual underpinnings were driving it. But more and more on an individual basis, we are seeing that kind of movement in stocks, and you don't really know exactly what's going on here.
Yeah, I think, look, we've all read enough commentary from, you go back to like Robert Schiller's books and stuff about how, financial media is so stupid because they try to make a story out of every one day's, stock market move. And really it's a random walk and none of it really matters. And, to some extent that is true. But I think, Julie, as you're kind of, alluding towards here, this has been taken to a new extreme where in a way, it actually is easier to explain because it's like, some people talk about this name on the internet. That's why it's up a lot. But it really is, it's probably not the end point, but it feels like an end point of sorts around that theme that no one knows what happens in the market and no one knows why it happens in the market. So the reason why it happens is that there is no reason, if we can kind of follow that chain there.
Yeah, Myles, you mentioned in the morning meeting this morning, like trying to figure out what exactly is a meme stock. So I've been thinking about it all morning. And I thought it was those companies with high short positions, GameStop and AMC, you name it. But, I spent 15 minutes this morning in the Wall Street Bets thread instead of really just crunching numbers on one of our next guests, which is just amazing to me, being a fundamental guy. As I mentioned, nonetheless, it may just be a company that people can understand and they see in their everyday life. I saw, believe it or not, Coca-Cola shares mentioned a good bit in the Wall Street Bet channel this morning. I think in large part because I believe Coca-Cola sells into a lot of the fast food players, and I believe also Wendy's as well. Workhorse is getting a nice move here in the pre-market. Again, it's a company that you can understand. You can see what they do. They're making electric vehicles, and it's a funny ticker name / symbol.
And I think, Soz, that does explain, though, as the GameStop thing, started with a fundamental case. This also speaks to the democratization of market knowledge. Like, you don't have to be a CFA and work on Wall Street to understand that a traditional case for a supplier of a growing business, like a traditional case to buy a stock is, it supplies into a growing market. It supplies into a growing business. So Coke is in Wendy's is a very Wall Street 101 type bull thesis for it. Now, is it warranted? Is it going to play out? I mean, I don't really know if there's some fundamental catalyst inside of Wendy's business that makes it a growth opportunity for Coke. Maybe it's a reopening trade of sorts, but those stores have been open the entire time anyway. So if you really wanted to do it, it probably works the opposite direction. But again, I think it shows that people can understand why you would want to buy a certain stock and what the case could be. And for a long time, way too long, there was this idea that only a certain type of financial analysts could read and understand the intelligent investor and all this kind of stuff. I mean, what Warren Buffett's been saying for years is that anyone can pretty much do this. Most people just choose not to. And so I think that's what also really excites me about some of this Wall Street Bet stuff is, there's a lot of jokes out there and a lot of it is internet culture, but there are a lot of people doing really good, thoughtful work on names who previously were assumed to be just marks for, hedge fund sharks or whatever.
Well, maybe they still are marks, or maybe hedge fund sharks are the ones doing some of the trading or much of the trading. Who knows? I'm not sure where Clover fits into the whole consumer-facing, easy-to-understand phenomenon, but we'll talk about that another time.